it might be happening. I think I am becoming an AEW fan. Well, generally speaking, I already am an AEW fan, but I may be getting to the point where AEW makes it into my more common rotation. Right now, as it stands, I watch every WWE show, and I've been catching AEW pay-per-views when they come around. Actually, I think I watch AEW about as frequently as I watch NXT. It's really just the pay-per-views and the PLEs right now. And for me, this is a big step in my journey of, discovering more wrestling. If you're new here, basically this whole channel is dedicated and is built from me getting into pro wrestling about a year and a half ago and essentially documenting how that journey has been going. Don't worry, I won't go into that right now. There's a video for it if you want to check it out, and there's some other ones than when I first started watching AEW as well. What I think is interesting is that the first time I watched AEW was the Double or Nothing pay-per-view that was a few months ago. Now, I went into that one knowing almost nothing about AEW in terms of who is in it especially. I maybe recognized one or two names, but I was still relatively, still a little fresher to pro wrestling as a whole. So it was really just me watching a bunch of random names do a bunch of crazy stuff that I was really entertained by, and overall I enjoyed my experience. But when I watched All In, that was different. It hit different. Is that because the show was better? Maybe, but I don't think that's it. You see, the difference between when I watched All In and Double or Nothing is when I watched All In, I recognized a lot more names that were on the show. Most of you know that's heavily credited to the Patreon. For those of you who don't, I use the Patreon to go back and watch a ton of old wrestling matches all the time. I post on there sometimes 2 or 3 times a day of me going back and watching old matches from every promotion. I watch old WWE, WWF, ECW, WCW, AEW, New Japan, a lot. And so going into All In, now that I do that, I was recognizing so many more names, which was giving a little bit more context and was letting me not just watch for, the explosions and the big spots and whatever. I was finding myself invested in matches. And I think that's the difference between just watching the show and being like, yeah, that was pretty cool. He did the flippy and that was really cool, versus tearing up over a guy like Bryan Danielson because I watched so many of his matches on the Patreon to the point where finding out this might be his retirement actually upset me because I want to watch more of him. This got me thinking maybe I would enjoy this more if I sat down and watched more AEW. Not just the highlights from the past, but maybe if I was in on the story as they were developing. Who knows? Now, this is the part where I let you in on the secret, where I would like to make a video of me watching AEW for a month straight. I don't mean binging years. I mean watching AEW fully, the way a AEW fan would. I haven't done that yet. I've only watched a couple of pay-per-views, and I think I want to try to watch the weekly shows all the way up to a pay-per-view and see how it affects my experience going into the following pay-per-view. This leads me to my first question that I would like a little bit of help with, because unfortunately I'm not able to watch all of these live. I have a Twitch stream schedule where this schedule has kind of been built over the course of the last 3 years, and I don't just want to cancel a month worth of streams so that I can watch this. So I went ahead and went on my YouTube TV and I set what I thought was going to be 2 shows a week, but apparently there's 3. Which of those is the must-see TV? Ideally, I would watch all of it. If it's on 3 days a week, ideally I would watch all of it. But when I looked up AEW to set them to record so that I could watch them after my streams, I saw there was Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage. That's a lot. And considering I'm already doing a lot of other stuff with the streaming on Twitch, streaming on YouTube, I'm watching all the WWE shows, I'm making videos here, I'm making videos on Patreon. Adding 3 shows is kind of a lot. And I've heard people say that I think it might be Rampage or Collision that isn't really as important, or maybe it doesn't have the big storylines. As much as I would like to be able to say I just watched all of them for a month, I don't know if I can reasonably. So if I can only watch 2 of them every week, which 2 should I be locking in on? I'm assuming Dynamite is the one that is the main show. I don't even know really what I'm basing that on. I'm kind of just basing it on what I'm seeing people say and how they talk about Dynamite. I feel like it gets brought up a lot more than I hear the other ones. I don't really hear about Rampage that much really at all. I think it's really just Dynamite and Collision that I hear about the most. I just want to make sure that if I'm going to be leaving a show off the table, there is a consensus in this community of which one I would be safe on, maybe just catching the synopsis afterwards. So like, I don't think I'd be totally skipping it. I might catch highlights or I might look up what happened, but watching 3 full shows on top of everything else I'm already watching, I just don't think it's possible. This is something I'm probably going to be starting in the next week or so, and I'm probably going to go all the way through to whatever the first pay-per-view is after about 3 to 4 weeks of watching. Maybe I should look up when that pay-per-view is so I can just start a month before. My next question is a little bit more fun. I am a merch guy. I like buying wrestling merch. I like buying merch for a lot of things. I like collecting stuff. I mean, I've got a Pip-Boy mug on my shelf over here because I'm a huge Fallout fan, and I have a bunch of wrestling shirts. I have wrestling hats. I have a lot of just merch items that I like to collect because it's just fun. I like it. I have a question about AEW merch though. I've noticed something when watching shows. I've noticed something even going to house shows, WWE shows, whatever. I don't see a ton of people wearing AEW merch that is showing off a wrestler. I'm not saying I don't see any. I've definitely seen some, but I see something in an AEW crowd that I don't see in WWE crowds. What I see is AEW fans wearing AEW merch. And I don't mean just all AEW merch. I mean wearing a t-shirt that just says AEW, or just wearing a hat that just says AEW. I don't think, maybe once I may have ever gone to a wrestling show or seen on TV somebody just wearing a big W for WWE. Why is that? I have a couple of guesses, and maybe you can confirm. Maybe it's different for different people. First of all, I'm going to say this: the AEW logo, clean. I like it. Don't get me started on the Dynamite logo and all the colors. I really like that. I'm a former graphic designer here, and I really like how, I've said this in a few videos, I love AEW's use of colors with a lot of their pay-per-views that I've seen, the ones in the past, their logos, just beautiful. I would probably wear a Dynamite shirt though, more than I would wear an AEW shirt, but anyway. So I get the logo looks good, but is it like a pride thing? Is it a, I am an AEW fan, or is it you trying to find this camaraderie and you want someone to see that you watch AEW and that means something to you? Or is it more of an awareness thing? Are you advertising it a little bit on behalf of a show that is obviously started in recent years? I'm not trying to imply that they're like a small show by any means or whatever, but the reality is between them and the WWE, they are a smaller show and a much, much newer show. So I could understand the logic if an AEW fan wanted to wear an AEW hat, and maybe someone sees that walking by and goes, didn't know there was a new wrestling show, and maybe they Google it and maybe they turn into an AEW fan. Or maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe that's just a cool thing to do. I don't know. I'm only asking not because I think it's weird. I just think it's weird that I don't see it over in WWE, or I don't know if I've seen it in other shows. Maybe I haven't actually watched a full TNA or New Japan show, but I don't think when I watch old shows from either of those, I don't think I see people wearing the show logos. If I have, I definitely don't notice it as much as I see it with AEW. And this isn't from a lack of availability. I looked online. I checked, I think it was like Pro Wrestling Tees. I also checked AEW's website. There's a lot of pretty cool merch. I even saw there's like a mystery box thing. That's kind of risky. But I mean, I was this close to buying a Tony Storm, like I think it was like chin up and tits out. I don't know what it means, but it looked funny and I like Tony Storm. I almost bought it. It's kind of cool that AEW is willing to make shirts that, you know, will put a bad word on there or be a little more edgy or something, because you don't really get that as an option anymore as a WWE fan. So I guess that's just adding on to why I'm asking about the merch. Is I see there's so much cool merch, and yes, I see some of it worn at shows. I'm just surprised some people would elect to wear just the show's logo on their shirt or hat. My next question is regarding like gimmicky matches or special match types. I'm a big fan of strategic type matches. I like matches that are, as much as I love a good pinfall submission, I do enjoy mixing in matches that have specialized rules or something I'm not used to seeing, something that's just different, whether it be the ladder matches, the table matches, the dog collar, cowbell, strap, whatever match, something that adds an element that's never there or hardly ever there for regular matches, where the goal is different. The goal is changed and there's a different strategy that can be used on TV. Are there any in AEW that I wouldn't see or haven't seen in any old or current day WWE? I've seen the dog collar match. I've seen this Casino Royale that's like a gauntlet. And obviously I've seen the ladder matches, and I've seen a Stadium Stampede match that was nuts. Very silly, but it was fun. But are there any matches that kind of have a special rule set that's interesting? Not just flashy and dangerous, but interesting. Something that brings in a strategy that you might not get in a regular match. I saw a clip at one point where the ring exploded after a certain time. I don't even know what that was. I'm sure I'll learn about that at some point. And then it's kind of like a two-part question, not just the matches, but also gimmicky pay-per-views. Is that a thing in AEW? The comparison I'll bring is the WWE ones I'm talking about. Money in the Bank is a pay-per-view / PLE that is focused around these ladder matches that give you a special briefcase that you get to cash in. They have the Royal Rumble that is a PLE that is based all around the battle royal type matches. Does AEW have pay-per-views that are based around specialized matches with some sort of maybe a Money in the Bank equivalent? I'm sure they don't have. I'm sure they didn't copy it one for one where they just brought over a briefcase and all that, but I'm sure there's something, right? Like I said, this is something I enjoy. I like these gimmicky different matches that come around once in a while, and that's something that I would like to be able to look forward to in AEW or any other show that I'm going to dive into. If there are, what are those pay-per-views? What are those special match types? What are the ones that I can potentially look forward to and maybe I try to make sure I catch if I don't end up sticking with watching AEW full time? And one more question based on that, just because I'm curious. Are there any that are in WWE that you would like to see in AEW? Put your pride aside for a second. If you're somebody who's watching AEW right now because you just can't stand WWE anymore, it's fine. Just put that aside for a second. There's got to be something over in the WWE that they do that you would like to bring. I mean, would you like an AEW Royal Rumble style event or something like that? Just curious. All right, let's get serious for this last one. Tell me, how do we feel about Tony Khan? Okay, not that serious, but I don't know how to feel about him. I haven't had much exposure to him. Now, I'm going to be vulnerable here, and I'm going to be completely honest here. I'm going to tell you what my perception is as a full diehard WWE fan, what my perception is. And I want to just let you know, this isn't meant to invite the response that I've already gotten when I've kind of had this conversation before. Your response to this hopefully isn't just, well, Vince did this first and WWE did this first. That doesn't really matter right now because I'm a new fan, and I'm not the only new fan in the world. So it's very likely that how I'm feeling is how a lot of other fans who would potentially get into AEW, but maybe aren't because of this perception. So my experience getting into WWE new, looking over at AEW, I see the guy running it, running his mouth and saying not great things about the thing that I love, WWE. Resist the urge. I know what you're thinking, but resist it. I already know about the t-shirt company comments. That's not the point here. So it was already difficult to want to give AEW a chance because the little I knew about it was that the guy running it hated what I liked. So obviously instantly I'm already thinking, okay, well, why would I watch what you're putting together if you're going to say that about what I like? I'll even be specific. It was the weird Weinstein comments when I was watching the NFL draft. Go Lions. And I'll say one more time, I don't care what he was referring to. I don't care if he was referring to something that made that comment make sense. The point is, most people who are new getting into this won't think to try to look that up. They're only going to hear an insult and say, well, that was weird. I don't want to watch your show. So now that I'm trying to get past that, I guess I would like to know what the true feelings on the inside as an AEW fan. What are the feelings on this guy? I know in WWE, people really love Triple H right now. Everyone's super happy that Vince is gone. Triple H has taken the reins, and people are pretty, generally speaking, happy with the Triple H era. How are we feeling about the Tony Khan era? I understand that he is the full-time booker, that he has advisors, but he does all of the writing and like the storylines, I think. Feel free to correct me if I'm misinformed on that. I'll tell you what sparked this question to maybe get an answer of kind of what I'm actually trying to ask here. Leading up to the Dynamite following All In, he tweeted something saying, sometimes you're just gonna have to trust me. Something like that. He posted a match that was coming up. People were kind of like, whoa, what is this? And he said something about, you're going to have to trust me. Now, I didn't get to see that Dynamite, but I did see the fallout after the show. Some people love the show, but I did see a lot of people that I follow who are AEW fans that were not a huge fan of that show. And they specifically cited that tweet where he said something about, you're just going to have to trust me sometimes. And they've said something like, well, now we know never to trust Tony in that situation again. So that's what prompted me to wonder, what is the thoughts on his storytelling? What is the thoughts on his booking? And safe space here. You don't have to convince me. I'm going to watch either way, but let me know honestly if you're happy with the fact that he is running the show and he is booking it, or would you be happy if he hired like a team of writers? Is there something he specifically is particularly good at? Is there something he is weak at? I'm going to find out a lot about the shows itself on my own, but I would like to have some sort of an idea of the guy running the show if you guys are willing to share that. This could change over time, but if I'm being totally honest, I like AEW more than I like Tony Khan right now, only because the few times I have been exposed to anything he's doing, it hasn't really been good exposure. I'm not against him, but it's more like I'm watching the show and I don't really pay attention to him right now. If you want to answer any of these, feel free to do it in the comments. You don't have to answer all of them. If there's one you feel particularly more equipped to answer, I'll be down in the comments as well, talking and reading these answers. Or you're welcome to join the Discord and continue the conversation there. We're building a really fun community filled with people that talk about wrestling, all shows, all promotions, 24 hours a day, because at this point, people have joined from all around the world. So if you want a safe space to talk about wrestling where nobody is arguing in a toxic way, I'd be happy to have you there. Lastly, we're this close to hitting 10,000 subscribers. I am insanely thankful for it. I would invite you to hit the subscribe button so we can hit that goal. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much to all the patrons that are flying up the screen, and I will see you guys in the next video.